Welcome to the Flora Sage podcast, a place where we help you create a life you're excited about. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for today's episode because I am having a conversation with one of my longest and dearest friends in the spiritual community. And I got to tell you, not even just in the spiritual community, just in the community that we have in general. And I just have to say that she is one of the most authentic people that I've ever come across. And she is amazing. I'm not going to say anything else. We're just going to get this conversation started. So Dajon, welcome to the conversation.
Yay! I'm so excited to be here. And we're both part of the veteran community too.
Yes.
All kinds of soul ties. It's crazy. I'm happy to be here.
So for those who are just getting to know you, share with us something interesting about you that people may not know to get this conversation started.
So a lot of people, when they first meet you, they like to be like, oh, where are you from? You know, they get all of those like basic things out of the way. And it's like interesting because I'm not really from anywhere. My mom was an entertainer of sorts and kind of like had all these jobs. And my dad was a musician and we were hippies very much. Like we couldn't even have like water guns because they were too violent. And then I ended up joining the army and serving for 13 years. So it's just, I feel like when I try to kind of like fit myself into a box, it never works. And when people ask me those questions, like, where are you from? They're always trying to like size me up or label, not in a bad way, but just like, they're just trying to figure me out. Right. But I would say the best, easiest way, I used to be known as the unicorn in uniform. And like, I have that duality of like the masculine, I have a Virgo moon, very organized and very like this, but then I'm a Sagittarius rising and a Scorpio sun. So I think like, that's kind of just a little introduction into like how I show up in the world.
I love it. And you know, that's so true. It's like so many of us are kind of this mixed bag of everything. But I think a lot of people have this mindset of let me find commonalities so that I can connect with that person based on those commonalities. And sometimes, usually it's our differences that bring us together more than those common things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I never thought about it that way. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, because it's like, for me, I love finding random stuff out about people that I know that I'm like, oh my God, I never knew this. Seriously, tell me more. I love it.
Yes. I recently like was talking with a group of women that know me pretty well. And they're like, we have a running list of like random Dajon stories. Like I never heard this about you, but you're right. It's like, those are the things that like connect us because then you're like, tell me more versus if somebody says like, oh, I did this. And you're like, oh yeah, I know that experience. I already have an idea of what that feels like in the body. Then you're less like maybe inquisitive or whatever.
Exactly. Well, yeah. And then it's just like when we find these nuances or these things that are unexpected, what that does, I think, is it just takes us out of that routine, takes us out of the expected, takes us out of the prediction of, this is predictable because whatever. All of a sudden our curiosity is spiked, which instantly connects us with that inner child of like, wow, what's that? Why is this? Why is that? And you start to dig in and you start to explore more. And that's when what I believe also is that awakens our intuition and awakens that part of us that came here for a purpose of exploring what it means to be human, which includes all the plot twists. And I know that your life has had a lot of plot twists and a lot of ways of that could derail some people, but allowing yourself to really kind of connect to your intuition through those plot twists and through kind of that unpredictability, I think has given you the strength that you have today.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely. I would say that like, it's also because I have had, so like when I was in the military, people were like, it's weird that you're in the military because you're kind of this hippie. But then like my hippie friends or my woo woo or whatever, love and light friends were like, it's weird that you were in the military because like, I don't see you like that, But I think that like you said, like, those are the things that have kind of like given me a different perspective. And even when like the world, like when, you know, the last couple of years when there was so much division, I was still able to see both sides. Like I was, you know, still able to be like, okay, I can see why you feel this way over here. And I can see why you feel this way over here. And a lot of it was fear-based, regardless of what side you were on, you know, or whatever. And it's, I think that like that way of like viewing the world is because it's also how I want to be viewed. Like, I don't want to just be put into like, oh, well, you voted for this, so you must believe this, or you know, you believe in crystals, so you must be one of these people, or, you know what I mean? It's like, I think that we miss so much connection because we are a little bit maybe trying too much to put people in the boxes where like, I don't know. It just really came clear to me when I left I keep referencing the military, but I think that that was just a pivotal time in my life because I had to discover who I was and what the challenges that I had, like how I was going to allow them to serve me. And there's a literal stripping away because when you walk into a room in the military, you immediately see ranks and names and patches of like, this is where this person belongs. And then now I was out into the world as a civilian, so to speak, and was like, well, now who am I? Right? I can't just walk into a room and go, oh, that's so-and-so, and they're from this unit and they have this much rank or whatever. Right. So it's been interesting to like experience the world in that way. And I think we all do it in you know, in our own ways. Like when we walk into Target, you know, and we kind of, you know, size people up, but like, what if, like you said, that energy of like curiosity, that childlike wonder, and you can be like, what if, you know, this person believes this, but they're coming from a really good space, or what if, you know, I don't know. I just think that question, what if, it allows for more like exploration in the world.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and another thing about the military too, not just rank, gender.
Oh gosh.
Like they see you and they're like, oh, you're a female Marine, you know, and it's just like, oh, really, like, oh, you're one of them. It's like, I'm one of what? Like, seriously, I signed my name on the dotted line. I'm sacrificing 4, 8, 13, 20 years in the military for my freedom. Like, what, you know, it's like, ooh.
It's so true. And it's weird because in the Army, they used to tell us, you're not male or female, you're a soldier. Like they would put that into your head. Like when you're in basic training, they're like, oh, just because you're a female doesn't mean, you know, like whatever, you're a soldier. But then when you start actually getting out into serving, it is like this weird dynamic. And I remember being told, you know, don't wear scented lotion because the men can't handle it.
Right.
Like things like that, like wear a sports bra. So when I got out of the military, I also had like an identity crisis around like, what does it even mean for me to be female? Like if I identify as female, what does that mean to me? And my girlfriend was like, she's like very out there, just wears all these fun outfits. And she's just like herself 100%. And so she was like, Dajon, just try wearing red lipstick, like go run your errands and wear red lipstick. Yes, and I was like,
you can rock red lipstick too. I love it.
But now I can, but for a while there, I thought it was the craziest thing. And it's not because I had judgment about red lipstick. It was because for myself, it was like, no, that's too flashy. If you wear mascara when you're in uniform, you know, you're, you know, whatever.
Yes,
exactly. And so like, it's so interesting how you can just even shift into like a new character by literally just putting the red lipstick on. And I was able to kind of play with that. And I think sometimes it's fun, like just go to Goodwill and pick out something that like draws your attention, but that maybe you wouldn't normally wear or something. It could be like a little $5 shift where you're like, oh, I'm stepping into this quote unquote label today, right? Like you can use it to your benefit versus like letting it like close you in. And I found that in Minnesota, that I live in Minnesota, but I'm not from here. And I found that a lot of people like cling to their labels for safety, you know?
Yes. Yeah. So speaking of that, so we're going to kind of circle back around to your parents, your upbringing where you couldn't even have a squirt gun. So I'm very intrigued about this. So share with us kind of that mental pivot or that mental curiosity that you went through from growing up where you couldn't even have a water gun to joining the military. Like share with us that whole experience.
Oh shit. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I tried. So I went to a Lutheran boarding school. I had a pretty tumultuous childhood where there was a lot of abuse and alcoholism and sexual assault and all this kind of stuff. And so I ended up, acting out and got my ass sent to a boarding school and a Lutheran one in Missouri. And it was, pretty conservative there. And so I followed all the rules. I did all the things that the good girls do. I dated the pastor's son. I was in student government and I did all the things and I checked all the boxes and I ended up at a Lutheran college. I was going to be a teacher and I was going to marry a pastor. This is what I was going to do. This is going to solve all my problems. Because look, now I'm following the rules. And it felt safe to me at the time because I saw other people that were doing it. And it was like, oh, look, they're normal. Like, this is what normal looks like. Obviously, there's no such thing as normal, but I was 17, 18, trying to find my way in the world. And so I was like, those people are normal. I'm going to do that. Well, I lasted a semester at this college. I grew up in a very my mom doing makeup for drag queens. My brother was gay. I have a transgender uncle. And so I grew up very comfortable with people from all walks of life, and I also lived in Detroit for a long time, which was very diverse. Well, I ended up at this private college in Nebraska, and they wanted us to write papers about these places that people would be sent to make them not gay anymore. And I, at the time, was waiting tables at Hooters. But I was keeping it a secret from everybody at the college. So anyways, I came in to give my paper and I wore my Hooters hoodie, not my uniform or anything, but just like a hoodie. And I gave my talk because I was so annoyed about it. And I was like, this is not me. And not that I'm not saying anything about Lutherans or anything about that. But for me at that time, it felt like a sign that wasn't where I was meant to be. So I went and I didn't know what to do with myself. I was, waiting tables. I didn't really have any direction. I was fine waiting tables, but I felt like I wanted something more, but I didn't know what it was. So I went and did this. I was like, how can I get fast cash? And I went and did this study where you go for 2 weeks and they feed you Vicodin and then they draw blood.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think it was for 2 weeks, I got $2,000. And at the time that was
that's a lot of money for,
just being high and getting my blood drawn 98 times from one vein. So I went and did the lab study and I was sitting in you got 30 minutes on the computer a day. And I was sitting there and I was talking to this guy and obviously I had Vicodin in my system and I was not, necessarily my clearest. And I was like, I want to live I want to move to California. He's like, yeah, have you ever been? And I was like, no. He's like, well, where would you live? And I said, I don't know, San Diego looks cool. And so I got online during this lab study and found a roommate on roommates.com, I believe, or something like that. And I left the study, got my check, moved to California. Turns out that it was a creepy guy that actually didn't have a spare bed or spare bedroom. He just thought I was going to share a bed with him.
Oh shit.
So I'm trying to speed the story up. So then there's all these things, but then I moved with the girls downstairs because they invited me in, but then they had a lot of stuff and we ended up getting there was a girl, she was a pharmacy student and she liked to mix pills. And we ended up getting robbed by some drug people because she had all these pills in the house, which I was this was a whole new world for me because I came from Lutheran boarding school world. So I was what is going on? And so I ended up
fresh hell is this? What?
It's not of the beach life. What is that? So I ended up meeting some new roommates. I don't even know how, but somehow I met some new roommates and they lived down by the beach. And then I lived the beach life for a while, but it's expensive. And I just kind of ran out of money and it was well, what's next? And my brother had joined the Marines, but I love you guys so much. But he was crazy. He was fresh out of, training or boot camp or whatever you guys call it. He was fresh out of that. And he was oh, hoorah, Marines the best. Everybody else sucks, And I was like, okay, well, that's not an option for me.
Yeah.
So, and now,
fun, but yeah.
Well, now I love Marines because they're down for anything and they are just a good time. But at the time I was that's a little bit too much because, I've still come out of this Lutheran boarding school life and I was still very sheltered a little bit. So anyways, I thought about the Navy, thought about Air Force and all of it was just but Army, I was I could do that. and they had a lot of jobs. So I just went and talked to a recruiter. His name was Sergeant First Class Good Enough.
Nice.
Literally Good Enough spelled.
I love that. So good.
And I now look back at it and it's I didn't know about like the signs and everything. My mom was a shamanic practitioner growing up, but she was also a stripper. So like there was a lot of duality in our household, and I was raised like doing Merkaba meditations and all this stuff like that, but I still hadn't like developed my own relationship with source. And so now I look back and I'm like, oh shit, that was totally like the good enough route.
Yes. That is legit spirit saying, okay, this is just good enough. Here, like literally and figuratively. Here you go. So like,
I've never met anybody with that last name since then, but that's legit what his name tag said. I'm like, you can't make this shit up. So anyways, so I joined the army, and I remember getting to basic training and being like, what the fuck did I just do? Like, I'm sitting there, everybody's like marching and army values and like blood makes the grass grow. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I had never shot a weapon, right? So I remember sitting, we were doing a training, and I actually am very competitive. So I ended up doing good at basic only because like I wanted to be accepted and I wanted to be enough. I wanted to like fit in and all of that. And so it wasn't that I was like, I'm a super soldier, but it was more just like, it was so easy for them to say, this is what you need to do to be good. And then I could just check the blocks and do those things. And I had never had that in my life. It was always searching and clinging and trying to get my mom to love me and everything. So I was like, oh, this is what you want me to do. I can be a good girl. I can do these things. And we were sitting in out in the field doing a training exercise, like a 3-day thing out in the field. And it'd been raining and it was wet and it was just a lot. And they were having us dig foxholes. And so they're digging a big hole in the ground for people. I think everybody knows what a foxhole is, but anyways, we're digging the hole and there's this big tree root coming through this hole that I'm digging. And I was like, drill sergeant, I cannot keep digging through the tree root because, I don't want to hurt the tree. And he was not a happy camper with me. He's like, damn it, private, blah, 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 blah. But he made me sit in the foxhole for like hours because he was so mad that I refused to keep digging, but the tree was unharmed. So I felt very like, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. And it all ended up working out. Like I never really, it was weird because there was always this constant friction. Like when we'd go out to the range and they would tell us to aim our weapons at center mass, which is where the heart is. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's the heart chakra. And I'd be like having tears streaming down my face. And so I don't know. I think it was I know it was where I was meant to be, but there was definitely this constant battle within of like, who am I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. And it's just like, they really strip you from your own identity, and they do that on purpose because in the combat situation, you have to be part of the unit. There is no individual, because individuals get killed. I mean, because they have that, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go here where everybody else is going this way. He's got no cover. He or she has no cover. They're going to die. Yeah. Or the huge potential of that person dying. So it is, I mean, I remember going through boot camp and like I didn't know the Marines was the hardest until after. Like all my friends were going. My sister went. Like my boyfriend at the time was in. His best friend, my sister's boyfriend. I was like, everybody. I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll join the Marines. I got kicked out at 16. I'm living in this janky, rickety ass old farmhouse apartment with my sister, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I can't keep doing. And I was working full time to pay rent while I was going to high school. I barely graduated. I graduated with a 1.975 GPA. I was like 63 or something out of like 64 people. It was bad. I barely graduated. Anyway, so I was like, fuck it. I'm out of here. I'm going in. But yeah, like they pick at you and they find that little thing. And mine, they called me selfish one. And my stepmom used to say that to me. And I was like, oh. And I was like, wah, wah, wah. And I no self-esteem. I was like, fuck. But they do that on purpose. They literally strip you of your identity. And then, yes, the Marines are like, whoa, like we're the best. Everybody sucks, but you got to be kind to them because, well, whatever. And it's like, And it's like, yes, we're here for a good time. And I was usually the sober one that was like, I'll be like we like the sober driver, whatever.
Yeah.
And, but it's just like, holy hell. And you feel like, who the fuck am I outside of this? And I remember signing my DD 214, which was, like the exit papers.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know. And I remember walking back and I felt like, fuck, now what do I do? Like, who am I? What is it? Because that title that you had for so long it's all of a sudden gone. And now, yes, I'm a veteran, but what does that even mean? And I honestly, call me stupid or naive or whatever it was at the time. I'm not now, but I thought in order to be called a veteran, I can't believe I'm admitting this.
It's good. It's good. Let it out.
I've never admitted this to anybody before, you guys. I honestly did not think you could call yourself a veteran unless you saw combat. So
that's how it used to be, though.
Yeah. And
so that makes sense.
Yeah. And so I get out, whatever. And then I get, 10% service connected for my back. 'Cause I had a skydiving accident. I landed on my butt, broke my back.
Gosh.
Anyway. So I'm getting blood work done. And some old guy, like 70 or 80, was like, oh, talking about us veterans. I'm like, well, I'm not a veteran. He goes, you're here at the VA getting blood drawn, right? I'm like, yes. And he goes, you're a veteran. I'm like, but I didn't see combat. He goes, you don't have to see combat to be a veteran. You served. I was like, oh, fuck. I felt like an idiot. I was like, seriously. Jesus.
It makes sense, though, especially if you look back at some of the women, like the women, the air service pilots that would fly the planes overseas. They were never considered veterans.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes sense that you had that belief. And then when you're serving, you don't get told that stuff as you're getting out. It's almost like in my mind, I thought like the old guys with the hats with all the pins, those were veterans.
Yes. Like, and for women, like for dudes, you can kind of tell who is in because of course they got all the bling on their hat. But it's like, you never know. And then when you're at the VA, it's like, is that a veteran or is that a spouse?
Yes.
And we often get overlooked for veterans. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been at like Home Depot and I flash my VA card, veteran, and then I get 10% discount. And then, or I flash them now my app because you have to register, and then like the people behind me, why'd she get 10%? She's not a veteran. I'm like, yeah, I served.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of like this constant duality because we are women. Or present as women, it's just like, really, like, what the heck? And it's just like, ugh. And that's one of the things I think that a lot of people in our community have struggled with is labels and the outward labels of, well, you're a woman, so therefore that means yada, yada, yada. And, especially women in the military, a lot of us are alpha females. So we know how to get shit done. But at the same time, sometimes we do kind of struggle with the feminine, softer side of receiving. I know I'm a giver. Like I like, here, take it, not take like, like life sucking, but it's like, I love giving. And that was a really hard thing for me to learn, is to stop giving to people who just were takers. And I remember hearing this one quote. It's a biblical quote, but it's, don't cast pearls before swine. And I was like, what does that even mean? Because I heard that back in the day when I was born again Christian, never heard it as a Catholic, but I heard it as a born again Christian. And I was like, what does that even mean? And it wasn't until I think Sunny Dawn Johnston, who's one of our, mentors, she said it one time and it clicked. I was like, oh, stop giving to people that don't value you. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, that was massive. So learning to regulate how much and to whom I gave to, and also who I received from, to make sure that I was finding value in it and not just taking to take just because it's free or because it's there. It's like, so that learned, like that was one of the things that I learned, was this huge shift in giving and receiving and taking. It's like, am I taking or am I receiving? Which was huge.
That can be powerful too. Cause like when I left the military, I was a single mom. So I did have to live in my masculine a lot. And I went to a conference and this woman was describing masculine and feminine energy. And she was like, so the feminine, this was like the first time I'd heard it like this. I mean, I know, it's common knowledge now, but she's like, the woman is, literally designed to be able to lean back. And if you look at like a water wheel, like those ones where it picks up the water in the buckets and it, goes around, she's like, basically, imagine that like it's the masculines over here and the little buckets are drawing energy from him and pouring it over the feminine. And I was just like, oh, like she wasn't taking it, but she was literally leaning back and just and receiving it. And I struggled with that because it felt so good to hear it explained that way. And I even started shifting the ways that I would walk into spaces. So like if I went into Starbucks, instead of kind of coming in with my, like, I'm here on a mission, get the shit done, I would literally like sit in my car and I would lean my seat back and I would do this little exercise where I kind of opened myself up like a flower. And I had never felt safe to enter spaces like that. Like I constantly had these walls up around me. And I noticed that when I entered a coffee shop or Target or whatever, in that like open and receptive mode, that like people would smile at me more or make more eye contact with me. And I was like, oh shit. So, because the reason I struggled with that at first was like, well, I'm a single mom. I don't have a masculine. Like I was thinking literally, like,
right.
I have to be all the things, and it was like, yes. And you still have a choice. Like you always have a choice. And what are areas in your life, even from your friends or your family, that you're not receiving, or maybe you're giving with the expectation to receive, or whatever it might be. Right. Like, and I was like, oh, this is fun. Now it's a game. Like now it's like this, I get to play with the energy versus it being like, woe is me. I'm this, disabled veteran that's been through all this shit. I'm tired. It's like, I had a chip on my shoulder when I got out and it wasn't serving me anymore. And so I think that like, it's fun to play with, like when I talked about like stepping into a new character, it was like, okay, what if the Dajon that showed up today showed up like this? What if she put the red lipstick on? What if she wore the cute sweater that she wanted to wear, even though she was just going to get groceries? I don't know, like, how does she want to play today? And that like shifted everything for me. And even now I'm still single and I'm still a mom, but like, I have this robust cast of characters in my life, and I don't feel exhausted like I used to, but I've switched. And it was like what you're talking about with those little tiny pivots. But when I look back over the past 5 years, they have like shifted the entire being of like how I show up.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love the illustration of the water wheel. Because
Mm-hmm.
I legit am that person. When I go to Target, goddamn, I am on a mission. I'm gonna stay focused. Got my blinders on. Like 3 things. Sure shit. I'm like, oh, squirrel. I'm like, oh my God, seriously. And I love to just like be in that space of just relaxation and just receive it and just receive the experience, not just the mission, and not just like, whoa, I do that. And, oh my gosh,
it's so good.
That reminds me, I was just recently in Hawaii visiting my son, and I was convinced my next tattoo was going to be here now. But to me, that sounds like direction. It sounds like, oh, you will do this now, like a ninja, and I'm just like, that felt too, and I wanted something softer. I wanted something a little bit, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. And I was sitting there with my feet in the ocean, just being. And then I got the hit in this moment. And you can say it like in this moment, or in this moment, or in this moment. And then you can put the ... like in this moment, I feel grateful, or in this moment, I am alive. In this, I'm going to totally start crying because it's like, so often we get focused on the destination and on the reward, on the result, on the meaning of things, on all the shit. And ultimately life is about this moment. That's it. That's it.
That's all we have.
This moment. Yeah. And it's like, it's so huge, especially when we release these identifiers, these markers of veteran, of mom, of daughter, of mother, of, all the things, business owner,
Yes.
all that stuff. We just release all that. And in this moment, I'm here with you having a conversation. That's it. That's it.
Yes. And imagine how much that allows for more connection in your life, because you're not summing yourself up with those labels, but then you're also not doing that to other people.
Yes.
Like I had some tough conversations with family members during a lot of the last couple of years, because there was so much divide around like who they were voting for. And I told them, like, I am not going to, because there was a big group email going around, and it was all around people arguing about voting and stuff. And I said, like, I am not going to partake in like this group email, but like, I would love to have a conversation with you one-on-one where we can actually like connect, because like when you're like not living in this moment and you are just tapping away at your computer, or you're scrolling on social media and you're like, comment, and you know, or whatever, you're not like connecting to that human in this moment. And we don't know what other people's mental states are or what they're going through. So it's just like, how is this serving me? Even that like question is like something that brings me back to this moment, is like, how is this serving me? Like, is this kind? Is it useful? Is it helpful? And sometimes you do need to freaking rage. Like, I get it. I'm not saying to bypass those feelings, but there's still like ways to do it that are still helpful.
Yeah.
And still allow you to be present in the feeling of whatever. Cause I used to be the person that's like, love and light, la, 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 la. Like, everything is fine. Everything is awesome. You know,
ship is burning. Everything's fine, people. Even though this is not a drill, my house is on fire, but it's okay.
It was, because I'm like, if I think anything else, I'm going to manifest more bad, and it's just going to be a shitstorm. So I would not like acknowledge the shitstorm that was actually happening within my body. And then all of a sudden my ears are ringing, or all of a sudden I'm gaining weight for no reason. And it wasn't about the weight. It was more just that like my body's letting me know that there's some sort of dis-ease, right? And that dis-ease could come in the form of illness, sickness, whatever. And once I started to kind of like listen to that, I held on, oh my goodness, woman, like I held on to this person in my life for the longest time ever. And when we finally like ended things, it happened in a way where I found out that for the past year, he had been with having another woman in his life. And this whole time we had all this friction between us, and I knew that it wasn't healthy, but like I wanted us to choose each other, but I could feel energetically that something was off. And there would be these little lies and these little nuggets of information and I kept kind of like bypassing them and like going, but the love, you know, but I love him and and everything. And so then when it came to this final culminating moment where it was like, it made so much sense to me when I realized that this woman, and I had a conversation with her, and I was gutted because I was like, I have to let go of this. And I went back and I started reading emails between he and I, and just moments of conflict that we had. And I started seeing all of these, like, this time when this happened, all the signs were freaking there, but I was like bypassing it because I wanted the love. I wanted everything to be awesome. And in the end, I was restricting my own like connection to the love by hanging on to a love that wasn't really love. And it wasn't the love that I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I recently had a conversation that this reminds me of. Is I was talking with someone who's dating someone who it's clear this person is not right for this person. I mean, from the outside perspective. Yeah. And I shared with this person, I said, because he made the comment about basically things have to blow up in order for things to end. And I said, you know, you can just say, I'm just not feeling this anymore. Like, I love you. I appreciate you. I really have appreciated our time together. I think we both have grown, but I think it's time for both of us to move on, you know? And it's like, I think sometimes, you know, because we are such loving, you know, creatures, we feel like, well, we're going to give the person the benefit of the doubt, and we ignore those red flags. We ignore that frustration, and our intuition is like, hello, our emotions are our dashboard of our car saying, hey, something's not right. Pay attention. you got a flat tire, or you got low on gas, or you need to get some, like your oil change. Our emotions, our energy, our intuition is that dashboard saying, hey, pause for a moment and check in with yourself. And I love, you actually have a lot of tools that you share with people. I think that you're getting ready to share with your, tribe called for the holidays.
Yes.
It's like a huge collection of audios that people listen to help get into that practice of pausing for a moment, just for 5 minutes, just pausing and saying, hey, wait a minute. What am I feeling? What's coming in, and why am I choosing to ignore it? Like, is there fear? Is this fear? Is this excitement? How can you tell the difference between fear and excitement? Like, what are the markers? And like, I love that you are able to share this with people, because what a thing of freedom that gives people to be able to identify all this hullabaloo sometimes that's going on that you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I love that you teach that to people, because it's like, sometimes we don't know what we don't know until you pause for just a moment, long enough to get your breath, find your center, and go, oh, okay. I need to ponder this for a second.
Well, and then like you are able to more quickly identify like what your needs are. So like if you aren't even identifying how you feel, maybe you just know like your baseline switches. So if you just are like anxious a lot, like maybe you wake up and you feel anxious right away, that becomes your baseline, and that's just how you wake up. And you don't even like, it just becomes the new norm, and then the complacency kicks in. But if you're actually taking the time to sit, and like you said, just 5 minutes and going, okay, or when you start to feel like a little bit off, or you feel like that red flag, but you don't, I used to like do analysis, paralysis, where I would try to figure all the things out. And what's interesting, just with that last story, I was almost like anytime I would get like a new message on Instagram from somebody I didn't know, there was this thing in me that was like, is this going to be the girl telling me that she's the girl he's with? Because like, even though I didn't know for sure, I knew there was things that weren't adding up. But what's funny is how I ended up finding out was totally random. I went to renew my ski passes, and 2 years ago I had gone skiing with him, and I didn't realize it, but my email was a part of his family account. So when I went to renew my ski passes, I saw her name as part of the family, and I was like, wait a minute, who's this? And so it was like, once I let go of my constantly trying to find the other shoe that had dropped, the universe was just like,
yep.
Here's the answer, Dajon. But I had to like let go of I had to first identify like what's happening here, and is this serving me? And then I literally like leaned back and I was like, hands off. I was like, all right, I'm going to stop trying to make this relationship work, or stop trying to justify like that this doesn't work for me, but that I love this person, or that maybe they'll love me enough to change, or whatever it is. And then it's like when they say, when you stop looking, like it finds you. The answer literally found me. And then I went into the grieving of like, I should have known, I should have did it. And it was like, no, Dajon, like those pauses told you, like those pauses, but you and it's okay. There's no shame in it. It's okay that you chose to whatever, but now you know better, so you do better. And I think that that's what I want to like share with the world, is like that you're freaking worth it. Like that your feelings are valid, and that your body is it's with you. It's working with you. Like it's all here, like conspiring with you. And there's nothing wrong if you kind of take a detour, or if you ignore the red flags, like, because you're just growing and learning. And like, you wouldn't be here having this human experience if you weren't. And then like, when I have those moments to give myself like space to identify how I'm feeling, then I can be more clear on what I desire. And then it's easier to identify what's the shift, what's the one little thing I can do today. And sometimes it's just getting my ass out of bed and taking a shower and feeding myself. And sometimes it's like a big thing, like launching something, right? Like it varies, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, and I love that you brought up like surrendering and just saying, all right, I'm done. I'm done. I'm just gonna, and that's the thing, is that our ego mind is like, you have to figure this out. And you start being the detective, you start being the sleuth, and then, you just start trying, and it's like, no, stop. I remember one time, I remember one time I lost my wallet. It is always in my purse. I never take I take my wallet out, I pay, I put it, I never take it out of my purse ever, ever, ever. And I get to the store, whatever, and I go to pay and I was like, where's my wallet? Like, it's not, I was like, shit, did I get robbed or something? Cause I'm like, it's never not out in my, it's always, so I was like, all right, so I drive back to the house. And I start looking and I'm like, I'm not going to look because it's always in my purse. And so I stop and I did muscle testing. I'm like, show me yes. And I like lean forward, show me no, boom. I'm like, is it downstairs? And I lean back and I got to know. And my eyes settled on my couch cushion, the crack in the couch cushion. And I see the little tiny zipper thing. And I was like, what the hell? And I go, it was in between I'm like, how the hell did it end up here? Like, seriously? But it's like, otherwise I would have looked forever. I never would have thought to look there because I'm like, it's always in my purse. And when I just stopped and I'm like, no, I'm just going to muscle test this. And it's like, how? And that's when we surrender, the answer just pops in and it makes no logical sense why that was there. It makes no logical sense that it's like all of a sudden, boom, here you, and you're like, oh. And when those answers drop in, it's without anything. It's literally boom, here's the answer.
It is. And it's like a sense of like, for a second there, I, was like, I knew this all along or whatever. Like, for example, when you have that aha that just like stop and just do the muscle testing, you're like, like, I know to do this, but it's also like, if we can take it ourselves a little bit less seriously, like in that moment where I saw the name and then I was like, I'm going to like look this person up. Oh, here's all the pictures of the past year of their relationship together. Okay. This is information and this hurts, but also now, how do I want to feel? How do I want to handle this? And like kind of being less of a judge of the people, of ourselves, of whatever, and being more of a witness and being like, okay, here's the information. I think that's one good thing that the military gave me was like a bird's eye view. Like, what's the mission? And like emotions are great. And like, they serve us on so many levels. And there are times when like we have the power to step back and go, okay, I'm hurting, I'm grieving, and I'm absolutely going to honor that. And what do I need in this moment right now? And like, and in that moment, like I needed just to like not act. Like I needed just to sit back. I wanted to act. I wanted to be like, what the hell? Like I wanted to rage and like pour all of my hate right at his face. But it was like, my thoughts are not going to be cohesive. It's not going to get us anywhere. It's just going to be this like, and I'm a Scorpio and he's an Aries and it's just going to be a shitstorm. And I'm Army and he's Marine. And
oh no. Yep.
Right. So I was like, and my birthday is a Marine Corps birthday. So like I have,
oh my gosh. I love it. I love it.
So I have love for you guys, but there is something to like, to that fieriness that comes from Marines. So anyways, it was like, okay, what's going to serve the greatest good? And like, that really helped me. And it allowed me to approach the conversation and myself with more grace and love, but also this other woman, like it allowed me to see us as all like players in this cast and that we all have our own experiences that led us to act in certain ways. And it doesn't help me to like hold that grudge. It helped me to speak my truth and say, this is not okay to treat people this way. And now like going, okay, I've seen this experience now. What do I want to call into my life? And I think in the past, especially being a Scorpio, I've held on to things like that. Like, oh, nobody's ever going to do this to me again. I'm going to remember this, and it's like, yeah, like, how is that serving you? Right. And what's interesting is after all that went down, I lost 5 pounds, like overnight.
Nice.
The weirdest thing ever. And it's not like, once again, it's not like, oh, about the weight. Cause it's about how your body feels. And I felt bloated. I felt like, and I thought I had just turned 40 last month. So I was like, maybe it's just part of aging, and maybe this is just my new body. And I was like, I'm just going to accept me the way that I am, which is great. And my body was also saying like, no, it's not about the weight. It's about that you feel like you need to purge some bullshit, sister.
Yes. Well, and that's one of the things that I talk about in my book and I talk about here on the podcast is eliminating all the clutter that gets in the way. And sometimes it's emotional clutter. Sometimes it's relationship clutter. Like I don't speak to certain members of my family, of my step family, because to me, they're toxic. To other people, they might be fabulous, but it's like, it's just, that's for my highest good.
Yeah.
And some people call me selfish for it. I call it self-caring. They can label me with whatever, but I don't even identify with that. I'm like, we're good. You know, I can love them from afar. And that's the thing is like, so often we have expectations of what things should look like or what, you know, maybe what we should say or how we should act or whatever. And the only thing that is constant is change. That is it. That is the only currency we have is time. And so when you know that time is truly of the essence and you can either spend it or you can invest it, and you know that something isn't working out, you got to give yourself permission to surrender. Like you said, surrender and just let go and just say, what can I do right now in this moment? How can I align to my highest self? How, you know, what's one little thing that I can do? And it could be some of the tools that you share in your program for people. So share with us a little bit about that program, because I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. So I actually created it last year, and then each year I kind of set the intention to add to it because I think it's kind of cool to grow alongside people and like evolve. I love courses where the person starts with it and then they go and like add another module that's like, okay, this is now my new level. I love seeing that anyways. And it's just cool to see where people began. But anyway, so I started this because holidays for me have been challenging. I live in a state because I share custody with my child with his father, who's from this state. I don't have family here. And even my family ties are kind of not traditional anyways. And so I usually volunteer on holidays. I don't do all the traditional things, which is great, but I still have I struggle with it sometimes because I still, see the people putting their Christmas trees up and posting their videos with their families and doing all the things, which I love. And I'm so happy for them. And sometimes I'm like, I wish I had that. So, I wanted to be more present, like we've talked about in this moment. And I knew that what we appreciate appreciates. Like I know that logically, but I wasn't practicing it in the best way that I could without bypassing the actual feelings that I was having. And so I started doing some embodiment practices and some breath work and just a lot of different things. I was playing with all these different modalities, and I realized that I used them all at different times. There was times where I was at home and I had the time to sit down and put the headphones in and meditate. There was times where I just needed to dance it out, or times where I'm in Target in line and I just need something in that moment to regulate my nervous system. And so that's where Om for the Holidays kind of came from, was like getting back to that center, getting back to that space so that we can be more present with our families. So we're not getting tied into, let's say you do have a big family gathering. Can you show up and be love? And can you show up and still speak your truth and still be authentic to you and genuine, and do it in a way that serves the highest good? And that's been a challenge for me because I don't know, I think when I was younger, I would just cut people out. It was just like, and I wasn't necessarily getting to the root issue. Now, like you said, there's certain people in my family that I've identified that it's not healthy for us to have a relationship, but I've handled it in a way where there's been closure and it feels healthy, versus me just being avoidant or not speaking my truth or villainizing them. It's now it's more this less of a judge and more of a witness. Okay, here's information. We are no longer aligned. It's okay. I love them. I'm over here. Right. And that's such a different way to live than harboring that resentment and harboring the hate and all of that. And so I think that that's part of it, but also for those that, don't have a lot of family or whatever your situation is, I just wanted to help people have the gift of presence, and that, and they're quick. They're get in, get out. I didn't want it to be anything, and it's not, there's no rules. Like you can, they come in a podcast form. So basically you just click the link and it will go into your, whether it's like you are Apple Podcast or whatever. And so it's just literally on your phone and you can just go in, you can scroll, you can just click. And there are a couple of ones like once, I think there's like 4 of them that are a little bit deeper dives, but it's labeled. So, this one's like 20 minutes, you're going to want to sit down. And the other ones are like, you can just pop them on whenever. And so that's all that is. It's just like it's an invitation. To like bring more of a peaceful heart into your existence.
Oh, I love that. Well, and it's not just for the holidays either. I mean, these are skills that you can use forever, but I think the holidays are the ones that are the most triggering for people and the most like huge. I mean, because like my family is like we're not Christian. So like I celebrate the winter solstice and I get a lot of shit for it. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't bother me that you're giving me shit. Like I'm going to use that shit and use it as fertilizer, but they're so triggered and they're coming at me. I'm like, we're good. Like, what's here? Like, you think I'm going to hell? I'm going to have a whole lot of fun because I like being warm. So, whatever. I'm like, I know it's fine, but it's like learning these tools is so priceless because you learn to just release expectation and you learn to just identify what am I feeling and this feeling is valid and what is this teaching me? What is it showing me? What's the wisdom held within it? And I think that a lot of people think that when they learn a tool, they're like, okay, I'm going to learn it. I'm going to use it. And then that's it. It's like, no, that's why we learn different tools. Cause you can pull on it when the shit storm happens. You're like, do I have an umbrella? Yes or no? If I don't, okay, I'm just going to sit here. It's a mud bath. Yay, whatever.
Right.
When you shift the way that you look at things, it helps so much. And these tools are the ways that you can learn to shift and look at things differently and also be able to gracefully move through them.
Yeah, that's the part for me. It's like taking the pressure off. So like, I think the holidays for me in the past not only brought up feelings of lack and like loneliness and all of that, but then there's the New Year's. And then it's like, oh, like for me, like I want to have a person to kiss on New Year's Eve, or what are the goals you're going to set? What's the new you in 2023? Right. And it's just like, none of that was helpful to me. For some people it's helpful. For me, it wasn't. And so I think that like you said, utilizing these tools, I really had to ground into them more around the holidays. And then it made all of those things. I shifted from like New Year's being such a big deal and made my birthday, my personal New Year's. And that worked for me. Right. But I wouldn't have like maybe come to that conclusion had I not like decided that, hey, the way that I'm currently engaging with New Year's in my life isn't serving me and it's making me feel some kind of way. And I'm freaking crying every New Year's. So like, I want to experience it differently. How can I shift into a new character? Okay, now New Year's Eve for me is just a shift of a calendar. It's an opportunity for me to connect with friends if I choose. And if I don't, it's okay for me to be sitting at home eating freaking pizza and watching a movie. And that doesn't mean anything. None of it means anything because time is a fucking illusion. And I'm just flipping the calendar today. And that felt like so much better to me than sitting. I remember one New Year's Eve sitting on the floor doing a vision board because I was like, this is good. My year's coming. And it's like, I'm doing the vision board and the clock switches at midnight and I'm just bawling, but I was doing the things. I was manifesting.
Right.
And it was like, no, this is not serving you, Dajon. Just freaking, you need to shift your relationship with this day. And like, it shifted everything for me. And so, yeah, that's kind of where all of this came from is I want people to like feel empowered, to feel freaking free because like, we know that like, the freedom, it doesn't come. So yes, money helps us with freedom because we can make choices and we can take care of ourselves and the people around us in different ways when we have money. But we all know people that have money that are fucking miserable. So like, I want people to engage with that spirit of freedom. And I think that that's another thing the military gave me was that I value freedom highly, and freedom looks differently for all of us, but like, how do we all free ourselves? So that's my rant.
Woohoo! Well, yes. Well, and like the beautiful thing about releasing all that stuff, that's when the money comes.
Yes.
Like and it's like, oh my gosh. Like when I discovered that, I was like, for fuck's sake, seriously?
He was right there all along.
Right? And I think as humans, we think we have to go through the struggle and work hard. And it's like when you release expectation, when you release everything and just say, I'm going to be in this moment, I'm going to do what feels good and just be in joy, opportunities come out of the woodwork.
Yes.
Like everything. And then you're just like, what if this works out? What is, and just get so curious and and you're just like, wow. And your new baseline then is joy. Your new baseline then is excitement. Instead of waking up anxious or whatever, dreading this or dreading that, you're like, okay. And if there's a plot twist, and if there's a plot twist, you're like, all right, let's roll with it. Let's see where this leads. And it's like, that's when the money comes. That's when the support comes. That's when these opportunities come that they just floor you. You're like, what?
There's no logic. And then if you wake up and you're having like an anxious morning, it's your relationship with it is different. Because you're more curious about it and it's not your baseline anymore. So you wake up with the anxiety instead of being like, nope, I got to work. I got to do the things. I got to make the money. Blah, 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 blah. You're like, oh, interesting. I'm feeling this feeling. Okay. I have now created a lifestyle of freedom. I'm going to take some time to be with myself because I know that that's going to pay dividends and it's not taking away from anything that I'm doing. And if I need to cancel this appointment or I need to reschedule this thing, it's all fucking good. And if somebody has a problem with it, it's on them. It all compounds on each other. And it's like, it's so magical. So even that anxious morning is now not the anxious morning it would have been a year ago or whatever. Or like I had a car issue and it's so funny. One year, this car issue happened. And it was this whole thing, the engine was blown and it was this whole, like the car had to go to the shop for the month. And it was like, blah, 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 blah. Next, almost a year later had something almost similar happen, except for this year, I reached out for help and I was like calm. And it was this one little thing. And it was I'm not saying that like, I know for a fact that me shifting my energy made it so that it wasn't a blown engine. It was like a fuse, but I felt like magic in that moment and just how I engaged with the experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And in my body, it felt different. And in my body, then I noticed that like the person that showed up to help me was like such a calming energy. And he was like, hey, let's just go over there. Oh, we're by the lake. There's a patio there. Let's go grab a mojito, And so we're sitting there waiting for the tow truck, having a mojito. And like all of the like just left my body. And like you said, like things just happen and they just show up all of a sudden. You're 3xing your income, but it wasn't because you tried harder. It was because you like leaned the fuck back and chilled out.
Yes. Yes. And I remember years ago, like when I would see people preach this same message, I'm like, I call bullshit.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah. I'm like, bullshit. No, because I was taught as a the harder you work, the more money you make. I was like, oh shit. And then I remember I worked at Walmart way back in the day.
Yeah.
And that was one of the questions. Do you believe, or which statement do you believe to be true? The harder you work, the more successful you'll be. It takes both hard work and connections, or it's all about connections. And I'm like, hard work, baby. Woo! And then I'm just like, it's connection. It's connection with yourself. Connection with yourself, because when you're connected with yourself through the tools that you teach and, like what I teach and all of us in the community teach, all of a sudden now you're like, whoa, because you can ping your dashboard, your energy, your feelings, your intuition. And you're like, oh yeah, I got this. And if I don't have this, yay, I'm buckling up for the ride.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I'm like going to be fine through it all. Like I have been at the depths of depression and like, just like the reasons I got out of the military was because I was like suicidal and I did not want to live anymore. And I was just like, I'm done with this human thing. And if we have free will, then I can freaking check the frick out of this planet. Like I was done. And, I tried and I lived through it. And I was like, well, now that I'm here still, damn it. I was so mad. I was like, well, I guess since I'm still here, I'm going to need to change some things. Yeah. And that was like the ultimate surrender for me, was like the ways that I've been going about it haven't been working. So I need to change some things. And I remember going actually to see Sonny Don Johnston in Arizona. And I ended up at some retreat, and I don't even know how I ended up there, but I did. And we were talking about somebody who had assaulted me in the military. And she said, what if on a soul level, you guys, before you came down here, what if this was somebody that said, I love you so much, I will come down and teach you this lesson. And I was like, screw you, Sonny.
Right.
Like, I was so angry. I was like, but then like, now I look back at it and now it's given me so much peace. And I'm not saying that we need to like dismiss the wrongdoings of people, but what it helped me do was engage with my anger and my sadness in a different way. So the feelings could still come up and they could still serve me, but it wasn't like I was gripping onto them and saying, fuck the world, I don't want to be here anymore. It was more just like, maybe things are different than how I've been perceiving them all along. And maybe I could play with a new reality and get a little bit more curious about this instead of continuing to lock my heart up to protect myself, which obviously isn't working anyways, because I don't want to live anymore. So like all of these things, I don't know. I feel like I could go on forever, but like it all started to make sense to me about like, okay, well, if I'm going to be here, then why not? And when you talk to people that are on their deathbed and they say their biggest regrets are working too much, worrying too much about what people thought about them, not spending enough time with the people they loved, not following their heart, like all of these things, they never said, well, if I just controlled a little bit more, or if I gripped a little bit harder, they're all like, I should have just been my fucking self. So like, let's do it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting how we get so serious about our life and how we get so caught up in that struggle and I think that that's kind of an old paradigm that hopefully is kind of ushering itself out, because I think our parents and their parents and their parents before them had all this struggle, that's what we learned. And I love that we're in the time that we realize there's a better way. And we don't have to struggle. And our ego finally just goes, okay, I'm tired. I'm done. And spirit's like, thank you. Woo! Now we can get some, freaking shit done. Like now we can make the magic happen.
Now we can have fun.
Exactly. And it's just like, because what do? We embody that curiosity. We embody the possibility. We embody the what ifs and the whys. And because I think when we're born, like we still have that knowledge, and then we're conditioned by society to forget it. And I love that what you have to offer shares that kind of that set of tools that we can start stripping away these layers of conditioning so that we can get back to the heart of who we are, back to play, back to curiosity, back to the what ifs, back to those little tiny 1 degree shifts so that we can come into alignment of who we're meant to be
and live in this moment.
Yay. Yes. Okay. So, how can people get a hold of you outside of this interview? And,
so Dajon.love is where I am on the Insta, and that's my website. So DAJON.love on all the things. And then that's where information about Home for the Holidays is and everything like that.
Yay.
It's easy.
So all those links will be in the show notes.
Yeah. I was going to say it's easy when you have a weird name,
Yes. I love it.
Just put Dajon in.
Exactly. Woo! Okay, so one last nugget that you want to share with all of us.
Ooh. I think for me right now, what's serving me most in my life is that I always have a choice. Not that there's anything wrong with me taking that moment to sit on the couch and eat the junk food and binge the Netflix if I need that moment, but that I at any point can choose to get up and go for a walk or to call a friend or whatever it is that it might need. And the more that I do the things, not from a place of shame, like for example, what we're putting in our bodies, or if we're exercising or not, or what we're, people talk about, scrolling too much on their phones or eating horrible foods or whatever. It's not even about the shame and the fear around it. It's about how is this serving me to be the clearest channel I can be? And when we look at our bodies as a vessel and we try to keep it clear, the choices become a little bit more apparent. We can see the choices more clearly. And so if I'm choosing to sit on the couch and eat the junk, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's a choice that I'm making. Okay, cool. And I can choose different. So for me lately, I would just to share that as an invitation. And it's not to shame anyone at all. It's the exact opposite. It's to empower and go, okay, what am I choosing today? I don't know. I guess that's all I've got.
I love that. Well, the power of choice is huge because in this moment, you can choose different. In this moment, you can choose a better way or a way that feels better, a way that feels more in alignment. And sometimes choosing is just a different mindset. It's choosing to walk away. It's choosing to say something where you normally wouldn't, or to not say something, it's like, all right, okay, I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut,
I'm a little ragey right now. Let me sit with this.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. Oh, Dajon, thank you so much for being here. Yay.
Thank you. This filled my cup today. So I appreciate you for letting me into your space and sharing me with your people.
Yay, always a pleasure. Well, and I hope that you will come back in the future. These conversations literally can go anywhere, and they usually do.
Yes. Thank you, dear. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, you too. Thank you, everyone, for listening to today's podcast episode or watching. All links mentioned are in the show notes. I will see you in the next episode. Mwah. Bye.
Bye.
If you've been loving these episodes, it would mean the world to me if you would rate this podcast on iTunes. A 5-star rating is what I always aim for.